Listen, forget every fancy-caped, handsome vampire story you've ever heard, all of them, because what I'm about to tell you isn't a legend, it's definitely not a fairy tale. This is the real story of how a human turned into a monster. You know that romantic vampire image pop culture sells us. It's like a nursery rhyme compared to the real Vlad, because in this story there's no love, no nobility, no eternity. There's only fear. Calculated, cold-blooded, and systematic fear. And let me tell you this right now. Vlad's terror didn't end the day he died. The true darkness began after that. If you're ready, we're opening one of the darkest pages of history together. If you want to join me on this journey, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. First, get this through your head. The real Vlad was scarier than your worst nightmare. He wasn't just an enemy, he was the most systematic, surgically cruel monster history has ever seen. Here's a spoiler for you. They didn't find him in a coffin with a silver stake through his heart. He was found with his head severed by the sword of his childhood friend, the Ottoman Emperor, Mehmed the Conqueror. But the real deal isn't how he died, it's what happened after he died. So, don't even blink until the end of this video, because Vlad's true horror didn't end with his death. Let's go back to the beginning, where it all started. The year is 1442. Vlad and his brother Radu are handed over to the Ottomans by their father as a guarantee of loyalty. Imagine these two kids being taken from the cold mountains of Wallachia to the Edirne Palace. Do you know who they studied with there? Prince Mehmed, the man who would later shake the world and end an era. They swung swords together, learned strategy together, and listened to the secrets of the universe from the same tutors. But there was a massive difference. While Mehmed used this knowledge to build a global empire and a civilization, Vlad was feeding a dark vengeance and an uncontrollable rage inside him. He learned Ottoman military discipline, how to command massive armies, and most importantly, what truly terrifies people, right at the heart of the world. In reality, Vlad was being raised like a spy, flowing through the veins of the Ottoman power that would eventually be his downfall. The real horror begins when Vlad takes the throne of Wallachia and dons the title Dracula, the son of the dragon. Look, my friend, this isn't just a story of a tough king. This guy was a psychopath, a terror engineer. He built such an empire of fear, just imagine. In the middle of the capital, Targov East, there's a well where everyone drinks. Vlad placed a golden cup, priceless and pure, right by that well. Not even the poorest man in Wallachia dared to touch it. People were so terrified, thinking Vlad is watching me, he's turned into mist. They couldn't even breathe comfortably. That golden cup stayed there for years. It didn't move an inch. That wasn't respect. It was the silence of a soul-crushed nation. You've probably heard of the famous banquet, but let's look at the grisly details. One day, Vlad invited all the beggars and the disabled to his palace. He said, "I'm giving you a feast. No one will be hungry anymore." Huge tables were set. Just as people were rejoicing, Vlad had the heavy oak doors locked from the outside and set the building on fire. He watched the screams and the scratching at the doors while sipping his wine in the garden, surrounded by the smell of burning flesh. "I wanted no one to suffer in this world anymore," he said. But Vlad didn't just play cat and mouse with the poor, he did it with his own noble enemies, the boyars. He invited those who betrayed his father to an Easter dinner. These nobles, thinking they were making peace, were instead marched through the freezing Balkan cold to the rugged Arges Mountains. His goal? To rebuild Ponari Castle. But he didn't give them a shovel or a pickaxe. He forced them all, the old men, the noblewomen, the children, to carry stones with their bare hands. As the nobles fell into the ravines from exhaustion, Vlad just watched. Today, the mortar in those castle walls isn't made with water, but with the blood and sweat of those people. Why did they call him a vampire? Because he treated death like an art form. It's said he collected the blood of people impaled on stakes in chalices and dipped his bread in that fresh blood during dinner. This isn't just a legend. These are the terrified eyewitness accounts of the diplomats of that time. He had his stakes prepared with such surgical precision so that the victim wouldn't die immediately, but would suffer for days. For Vlad, diplomacy wasn't about compromise. It was about leaving your soul on the table. Once, a diplomatic envoy from distant lands in Europe came to see him. These envoys were so loyal to their traditions that they refused to take off their hats in Vlad's throne room. To them, it was a sign of nobility. Vlad sat like a statue on his throne, eyeing them. A deadly silence filled the room. While the envoys expected a harsh reaction, Vlad spoke with a twisted, dark smile. "I am truly impressed by your unshakable loyalty to your traditions. Since these hats are so precious to you, I will make sure you never have to take them off again." Before they knew what was happening, guards burst in. By Vlad's command, the envoys were pinned down and the sinister moment arrived. Vlad brought in long, rusty iron nails he had personally selected. As the sound of hammers echoed against the stone walls, their hats were nailed directly into their skulls. Vlad stood over the screaming, bloody men and whispered, "Now you are one with your traditions forever. Now go back to your masters and tell them of Vlad's hospitality." After that, no envoy dared to step into Vlad's palace without fear, because talking to him was dancing with death. It's not known how much of this is fact and how much was a weapon produced by fear, but it was clear that he struck absolute terror into both friend and foe. Vlad didn't just lead with the sword, he led with psychological terror. His army didn't just consist of men, he used death and disease as soldiers. He personally engineered the first biological warfare methods in history. He would secretly infiltrate plague and leprosy-stricken prisoners into besieged cities and enemy camps like living bombs. Enemy soldiers would rot from the inside before they could even draw a sword. But the real dread was his night army. Vlad personally taught his soldiers how to move like ghosts in the forest at night. These cavalrymen, draped in pitch-black cloaks, tied felt to their horses' hooves, and glided through the woods at midnight without a sound. Soldiers sleeping in the enemy camp wouldn't hear a whisper, only realizing their comrade's throat had been slit when they felt the warm blood spray onto their own faces. Legends even say Vlad looked for ways to use wolves and bats as spies. A foreign army marching through the woods would see thousands of glowing eyes watching them from behind the trees. To feed this fear, Vlad placed massive mirrors deep in the forest, making torchlight reflect in a way that made the enemy feel surrounded by thousands of ghost soldiers. While they swung their swords at ghosts, the real Vlad would emerge from the shadows like a wraith and finish the job. He wasn't just commanding an army, he was commanding the night itself. But this time, the force he faced wasn't an army that would kneel to fear. When Mehmed the Conqueror heard that Vlad had nailed the turbans of his envoys to their heads, he said, "Even the devil cannot do what this man does," and personally set out for war. Think about the famous night attack of 1462. Vlad, with his black-cloaked cavalry, stormed the Ottoman camp. He had one goal: to kill Mehmed in his tent. But he met an unshakable discipline. The Ottoman army didn't scatter, the Sultan didn't back down. Vlad vanished into the darkness that night and fled. He ran, and the Ottomans hunted him, because this was no longer a land dispute, it was the execution of a monster. Years later, he was finally cornered. The end of this immortal monster didn't come by a silver stake, it came by a sharp Ottoman blade. His head was severed in a single stroke. That terrifying head was placed in a jar of honey and sent to Istanbul. It was thrown at Mehmed's feet so the whole world could see. No monster is sharper than the sword of justice. Now we come to the strangest part. The Ottoman sword cut the flesh and killed the monster, but the legend didn't die. Today, when you open that cold stone grave in Snagov Monastery in Romania, do you know what you find? Absolutely nothing. The grave is empty. Where are the bones? Some say his soul still wanders those misty Balkan forests. Others say the head cut that night belonged to a traitor, and the true darkness had already taken another form. The Sultan killed the monster and brought justice, but could the shadow that monster left behind still be breathing in your darkest nightmares? What do you think? Why is that grave empty? Let's meet in the comments. If this dark and mysterious side of history hooked you, you can support us by liking the video. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of these legends. See you on the next dark journey.